Today we're taking a look at what it means to parent teenagers. Our series is called G-Rated Living in an R-Rated World, and as I said to you earlier, if you're not a parent of teenagers, this message is extraordinarily important for you because teenagers look at the adults around them for cues on how to live life, especially when it comes to their spiritual lives. There's not a lot of teenage kids in our church, but there are a ton of little kids who are one day or who are already looking at you. Remember last time we had this message series and I talked about children, and the quote that I said to you was, what are kids more likely to do? Listen to you or model your behavior? Model your behavior. And that's exactly true with teenagers. I thought I'd start out by reading you a letter that my dear wife has sent to several moms. Maybe you received it from her. It is a fabulous letter. It's called the Mean Mom Letter, or The World Needs More Mean Moms. It goes like this. We had the meanest mother in the whole world. While other kids ate candy for breakfast, we had to have cereal, eggs, and toast. When others had Pepsi and Twinkies for lunch, we had to eat sandwiches. And you can guess our mother fixed us a dinner that was different from the other kids. Mother insisted on knowing where we were at all times. You'd think we were convicts in prison. She had to know who our friends were and what we were doing with them. She insisted that if we said that we would be gone for an hour, that we would be gone for an hour or less. We were ashamed to admit it, but she had the nerve to break child labor laws by making us work. We had to wash dishes, make the beds, learn to cook, vacuum the floor, do laundry, all sorts of cruel jobs. I think she would lie awake at night thinking of more things for us to do. She always insisted on telling us the truth, or insisted on us telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And by the time we were teenagers, she could read our minds. Then life was really tough. Mother wouldn't let our friends just honk the horn when they drove up. They had to come to the doors so she could meet them. And while everyone else could date when they were 12 and 13, we had to wait till we were 16 years old. Because of our mother, we missed out on lots of things other kids experienced. None of us ever got caught shoplifting, vandalizing someone else's property, arrested for any crime. It was all her fault. We never got drunk, took up smoking, stayed up all night, or a million other things other kids did. Sundays were reserved for church, and we never missed one. We knew better than to ask to spend the night with a friend on Saturday. Now that we've left home, well, we're all God-fearing, educated, honest adults. And we're doing our best to be mean parents to our kids like our mom was. Yeah. I think the world needs more mean moms and dads, especially in that light. But being a parent of a teenager is a crazy responsibility. I mean, you think that you've got it bad now, moms and dads who have little kids. I mean, you're just exhausted now. Just wait till the emotional and mental exhaustion kicks in with teenagers. I mean, something happens to them at 13 years old that you think you're ready for, but you're not. And for some of those kids, it flips on like a switch, and for others of them, it kind of comes in waves, and you're taken by surprise. If you got kids 8, 9, and 10, and 11 years old, please, please, please don't let them grow up because they're perfect right now. When they get to the 13 years old, crazy things happen. Mark Twain said this about teenagers. He said, when a child reaches 13 years of age, a parent should place the child in a barrel and nail the lid shut and then feed the teenager through the knothole. And when the child turns 16 years old, plug the hole. This is the same man, though, that said this. He said, of course, when I was 18 years old, I thought my father was the most ignorant man alive. And then when I turned 21, I was surprised how much the old man learned in just 3 short years. Something crazy happens to teenagers. I don't understand it. God designed it. It's a time of absolute transition. You think you know your kid. You went through the terrible twos. They behave themselves, and they become 2-year-olds again for some reason. We don't know why this happens, but I think it has to do with the transitional nature of what it means to be a child to being an adult. And it's a time of great uncertainty. Kids will do crazy things during this time. I just finished reading this book called How to Raise an Adult by Julie Lythcott-Haims. She is the admissions counselor at Stanford University, and she watches year after year as college students, college freshmen show up on campus, and she is appalled at the nature of how kids have turned out and who are continuing to be a problem 10, 15 years into the future. So I just thought I would share with you a little bit of what's going on from her perspective. So just a couple of things. First of all, there's this kind of parenting out there that has contributed to a lot of this stuff. Thank you. I'm losing my, thanks. So the first one is that the parenting trap of keeping our kids safe. Now, some of you are thinking, what? Pardon me? Shouldn't we keep our kids safe? Well, absolutely we should. But you know what? There has been such an overblown nature to this keeping kids safe thing, right? We put helmets on them and elbow pads and knee pads, and they have to wear right shoes and padded clothing to go outside and play in the grass. Really, that's what's happening. The overprotective nature of how we parent children is contributing to a teenager and an adult who does not know how to problem solve in their life. We're so determined to prevent accidents with our kids that we become bumpers and guardrails for our own kids. There's the overblown stranger danger. Now, some of you parents, you're doing a great job of teaching your kids about stranger danger. But did you know that strangers are less and less likely to kidnap your children? I mean, it's a statistical, verifiable phenomenon that 30% less strangers are kidnapping kids. I mean, 0.1% of the 85 million children, that's less than 100 children all across North America, are actually kidnapped by strangers. You know who the real problem is? Parents. Like this week, that woman with the 8 kids and staked 2 of her children to the dirt in her backyard. It's not strangers that we have to make our kids fear. We as parents are the primary issue. And if you're not a parent here today, those kids are watching you. So whenever I say parents, I want every adult in the room to pay attention, because there are kids in this room and in all the places that you go who are watching you to see how to live life. There's this overblown stranger danger, and then there's the criminalizing common conduct. I don't know if you saw this this past year, but there's a family in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. The Ontario Occupational Health and Safety Authority, along with the Children's Aid Society, showed up on their farm to put a cease and desist order because their children were helping on the farm, 8 and 10 years old, cleaning up after the chickens and helping on Saturdays to bring the poultry to market. That's crazy. Common sense things in our culture are being criminalized. If you've watched the news this week, you heard the Supreme Court say that 15-year-olds are the age 15 and up are allowed to stay home alone. So that means parents, if you've got a 14-year-old, it is criminal for you to leave your child home alone. Criminal. For crying out loud, I was working at 12 years old at a restaurant, washing dishes. Now, my parents weren't frivolous. They came to the store, they talked to the manager, they made sure the place that I was working was safe, and I worked at 12 years old. Now, some of you are thinking, 12 years old? What in the world? It was just the world we lived in. But to criminalize the fact that you can't leave your child at home, it's contributing to the nature of the product that we are producing with young adults as they go off to university. If kids can't be home alone, if they can't problem solve and self-discipline, who are we creating for this world and this society today? Another thing that Ms. Haims says, she said, you know what? We have missed opportunities for growth, and we try to protect kids' feelings at all costs If you have any influence at all in the sporting industry of children, please, can you work to eliminate participation medals? Can anybody else agree with me on this one? Why is it that we reward mediocre behavior? Now, I'm not saying that we don't encourage kids, so don't hear this, this is a crazy man up there. But the excesses that we have gone to is that we have said every behavior is good behavior. Really, that's the message that we're giving. And that's wrong. You cannot raise a child in that environment. Why? Because then the child doesn't understand when there is good behavior and when there is not. What is good achievement and what is mediocre achievement? A child and a teenager need to understand these concepts. And we are producing young adults who are, what was the word? I can't remember the word. We are producing young adults who assume that they are going to get things that they don't deserve. Entitled, thank you. They're entitled. Yeah. I've watched young parents, please watch this, stop applauding adequate or normal behavior. Oh, Johnny, you did such a good job. Thank you for bringing me that dish. Are you serious? Oh, thank you for not pulling your sister's hair. Good boy. Please, stop that. Reward good behavior. Absolutely. I'm not suggesting that you don't. But we've got to bring up children with the proper understanding of self-discipline, of a proper sense of ego, because we are producing adults that are no longer able to do that. Parents are still having to go out and do that for a child. She writes in the book, and I've seen this happen before, so it's not a unique experience, where young adults, 17, 18, or 19 years old, come with their parents, and mom and dad speak on their behalf to bankers, to lawyers, to school professionals, to job interviews. Believe it or not, I've seen that happen too. Mom and dad show up and they do all the talking for the kid to get a job. It starts right in the beginning with kids. The second one is providing opportunities. Oh, moms and dads have this checklist. As soon as the kid's out of diapers, they've got a list all the way till college on what they have to do and accomplish all through all of this place. There is a phenomenon out there called redshirting. And it's what parents do is they keep a child back a year from starting school so they'll have an emotional, and mental, and even physical advantage over their other friends in their courses. Just 1 year can make the difference between making a team or not making a team. By getting into the proper nursery school or not getting into the proper nursery school. And this is the crazy world that we live in. Being there for them. This seems to be the mantra for parents. I've got to be there for my kids. Well, guess what? If you're there for your kids all the time, your kids are not growing up. There's this phenomenon called helicopter parenting or snowplow parenting, where if you're a helicopter parent, you're always hovering around trying to swoop in to modify a bad situation for a child. Two moms standing on the side of a playground are watching two little kids fight. It's not terrible. It's not a earth-shattering situation. But instead of letting the two little kids figure it out, they become the ones that are now arguing. They didn't do anything. But for some reason, the parents believe that they have to get involved in every scenario for their kids. And of course, there's the concierge parenting. One of the things that I was surprised about hearing just recently from in her book is how some parents will actually show up at university and do laundry for their kids. Can you imagine? Because kids don't know how to do laundry. So what do? Right? We live in this world where parenting is a tough go. It is hard. And the problems that we face as parents and as adults is we overcompensate for a child and limit the possibility of growth. But we have this in their spiritual lives too. All right? I don't just want to complain about parenting in general, but there is a spiritual phenomenon that also goes on here. A spiritual phenomenon where kids and that age group and that age bracket, rightly so, with along of all of a list of other things, will say things like, I don't believe in God. And that can be heartbreaking for a parent. I don't want to go to church. It's just a dead religion, right? And in other areas of good parenting, we would say that's questioning the values of today, and that's a good thing as a teenager. And we allow kids the room to explore that. And I also want to give you words of encouragement here to say to do the same thing with their spiritual life. Kids are going to question what they believe. You see, because there's a cognitive shift that has to happen. And if we don't do this well as parents, we will become rule keepers, or we will become too passive for our kids when it comes to their spiritual life. We will become the rule police or the religion police for our kids, and that's only going to drive them away. Or we are going to be so passive when it comes to spiritual issues that what we'll do is say, isn't that great that you're questioning those things, and not put in front of them the resources to help them answer their questions. There's a great danger here in the parenting side of things for all the other stuff that we've got to do, but especially when it comes to their spiritual lives. Remember a few weeks ago, we talked about, I had this chart, and I said, if we're going to have G-rated living or God-centered living in our life, we've got to have God in the middle, kind of like a set of glasses where we put God on and see the lens through his lenses, and every part of our life has to be centered around him. Well, moms and dads, I got some good news for you, or maybe it's some bad news. But the reality is, and I've studied this, as a youth pastor for 10 years, as a pastor for 15 years, as a worker with young offenders in the juvenile system for 10 years, I know this to be absolutely true. The brilliant people in this world know this to be true. The number one way and reason that kids will stay with the values of the family is because the mom and dad model it. Not speak it, not pretend, not follow the rules, but they live it. It's the number one reason that kids will stay into church. It's the number one reason kids will take on the faith of mom and dad. It's not sitting around the table doing devotions. It's not about going to church. It's about mom and dad living a real faith in front of their kids. And it comes down to a couple of things that are absolutely crucial. If you are a parent of a teenager here, please, please, please listen up. If you hope for your child that one day they will follow in your faith footsteps, that they will carry on the faith that you have, pay attention to this, please. It is absolutely certain that kids who look to their parents as an example stay with the faith. And here's some of the things that they recommend if you're going to be doing this regular, everyday parenting thing. The number one thing, as they're growing up, from elementary school all the way through high school, that church attendance is regular and weekly. Isn't that interesting? I could say that to you, and people would go, well, he just wants us to go to church. It's a whole different ballgame when you think about it from this perspective. I'm not talking about taking 3 months off. You can't do that 3 months off to go to the sports things or whatever it is that you're doing. We're talking about regular, weekly Sunday attendance. It's a pattern of behavior that you establish with your kids, and it lasts all the way through high school, whether they want to go or not. I mean, there's always exceptions, but regular Sunday attendance. And here's the other one. Personal experience with God is absolutely crucial, that a young person have a personal experience with God. That's why mission trips are so important. Youth groups are so important. Friends who are spiritual are so important. Parents who wrestle through the dark places and the joys of faith and experience together as a family the faith that they have. So crucial to do that together. So hearing and seeing about kids, your experiences at home, one of the most important things that you can do as a parent, if you want to pass on your faith to your kids, you want to parent these kids into adults that have good discipline in their life, is to let them in on the struggles of the family. I understand there's age-appropriate ways to do that. So I'm not suggesting that you bleed all over your kids when you're going through some stuff, okay? But it is appropriate to step into those conversations with them. Bring them alongside you as a family. Pray with them for your family. Allow them the space to celebrate the joys of what God has done, because that makes faith real. You know, kids are pretty cynical, right? My mom and dad go to church. Yeah, they read the Bible. But boy, they sure know when those two things don't match up with what they just said to me a few minutes ago when they were mad. They understand the difference. Faith is absolutely critical to be lived out in front of those kids. And for those of you who don't have kids here today, those of you who are looking forward to the day you have kids, or you've got your kids all gone and out of the house, there is someone here today who's looking at you and your behavior, and the way that you respond is going to be an example to them about what real faith is like. It is so important that we pay attention to this kind of stuff. Psalm 34, I'm going to jump ahead to the Psalm 34. It says this, I prayed to the Lord, and he answered me. He freed me from all my fears. Psalm 34 is about pointing us as parents and as models and as role models back to the scriptures. And the psalmist speaks what's in our heart. Lord, I prayed to you and you answered me. I didn't know what to say to my kid. I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know if I was going to kill that kid or not. But I prayed to you. And you answered me. And you freed me from my fears. It doesn't say that it got everything right. It doesn't say that God miraculously arranged everything in the proper order. But what it does say is that, God, you answered my prayer and you freed me from my fear. Because when you bring God into the middle of this, when as a parent and as a grandparent, if you're facing the challenges of a teenage person in your life, you're afraid. Let me tell you. A lot of you have been there, eh? How many of you have been there? You're parenting your kids and you're just as scared as they are about what to do or what to say. So here's some suggestions. Set some limits with those kids. The first one is to really avoid the extremes, though, when you set limits. The extremes, of course, are pandering to their self-esteem or becoming overly extreme in the rules. One of my kids came to me and sat me down, brought a friend along. She was, in her teenage years already, and she was just really struggling with the rules of the house. Now, I can probably lean towards the rules more so than the, pandering to the self-esteem stuff. And that was a moment where she communicated to me, Dad, if you don't stop, I'm going to keep pushing back. And you know what? There is something very important between what's crucial and between what's critical and what's a swing issue. There are some critical things as a parent that you have just got to set some boundaries on, and you say, these are non-negotiables. Integrity is non-negotiable. Responsibility is non-negotiable. Compassion is non-negotiable. Self-respect, self-discipline. The Bible talks about a bunch of things that are just non-negotiable. Drinking underage, stealing, all kinds of things. These are non-negotiables. But what is negotiable? What are the swing issues? Tattoos, a messy room, purple hair, clothing that you don't agree with. I'm not talking about immodest stuff, but I'm talking about trends or styles. I'm talking about negotiating with your kids and letting them choose to either say yes to the consequences or to say to the bad consequences or say yes to the good consequences. Here's something that I found very, very helpful if you're parenting a teenager. Take the power struggle out of your lap and put it into theirs. Tell them, if you do this, here's what's going to happen. If you make that decision, if you do it negatively, this and this and this is going to happen. And if you do it positively, this and this and this is going to happen. Now it's your choice. Now they're not mad at me. Well, they still might be a little. All right? But if I put the power to decide in their lap, to choose good or not good, I'm teaching them self-discipline. And pray that your kids get caught. It's so important to do that. Pray for your kids and pray that they get caught if they do the wrong things. Why? Because you cannot keep them from the natural consequences of the stuff that they do. I remember when the kids were little, one of them swiped some stuff from the grocery store, put it in his pocket. We got home and started to unwrap the candy and eat, and we caught him. Oh, immediately, now is the time. Back in the car. Where are we going, Dad? we're going to go to the manager at the store. And the wailing and the screaming that went on because of that. Off we go to the store, the wailing and the screaming all the way through the store. We get to the manager, and I say, what have you got to say? Zip. Nothing. I said, what are you going to say? I'm so grateful the kid actually said something because I didn't want to have to go home and re-deal with this. But then there was an apology. And I said, what are the consequences, sir? Don't shield your kids from the consequences of their behavior. They need to feel the consequences. But here's the thing, parents. If you're going to tell them what the consequences is and you don't follow through, what are they learning? That there are no consequences. What does an adult do when faced with those decisions then? If that is a pattern over the course of their life, if that's what they've learned from you, and they're now faced with adult choices that have consequences, their tendency, even though they're smart, even though they're logical, even though they're grown up, their tendency, their default position is to believe that there aren't any consequences. We had a couple of guys at the ministry center who decided that they're going to park in our church parking lot. And one of the problems with that is that they've got the F-bomb on the windshield of their cars in a church parking lot. Now, some parent dropped a ball somewhere there, right? Some parent dropped a ball to teach respect to a bunch of guys who have profanity on their vehicle and park in a church parking lot without permission. But I parented these guys in the same way that I parented my kids. I went up to one of them. I says, look, you can't park in our parking lot. Put a little ticket on his window saying, hey, we're going to pray for you the first time, but the next time you might be towed. That's a good way to start, right? That's grace-based parenting with good consequences coming. Well, it turns out that I couldn't tow them. So I felt like, you know what, I cannot let this go because I cannot not follow through on the consequences. So I called up the bylaw department. We now have nice little signs on our ministry center that say, if you park here, the municipal bylaw authority can come, ticket, and tow you. And as we're standing there with the municipal officers, one of these guys pulls in the parking lot with the F-bomb on the window, and so he pulls up, and the wonderful lady, she was fabulous, the bylaw officer. She just stands right in front of the vehicle and eyeballs him. I couldn't have planned it any better. And she leans in the window. She goes, can I help you? He said, did I do anything wrong? Not if you're going to park here, you haven't. Not unless you're parking here, you haven't. No, I'm not parking here. And he turns around in the back of the parking lot, comes back out. And I hold open the window. I says, now hang on a second. I want to be fair here. We're going to make sure that cars are ticketed at this window, at this parking lot. And I don't want you to get a ticket. But if you choose to park here, I will call them, and they will come and give you a ticket. That is good boundaries. That is the way that you deal with a teenager who has a challenge that they place in front of you. Set up grace. Yeah, you know what? There's lots of room for mistakes. You know what? But if you make that mistake again, you got to know what you're in for. And I better follow through. I'm not going to let this go. I'm going to make sure that what I say is full of integrity. So Aaron and I were fixing his car. He's not here, so I'll pick on him. We're fixing his car. This is a wonderful story. We're working on his calipers. We go to Canadian Tire. They had a problem with their computer. And normally what happens is when you get a caliper from Canadian Tire, they charge you the core charge as well as the part, and then you bring the old one back and they give you the money back for the core or the broken one, right? That's the way it works. Well, they had problems with their computer and they didn't charge me the core charge. It was the wrong part. I brought it back. And then we go to the counter to get our money back. She gives me $130 more than what I paid for the vehicle or for the part. Aaron's standing right next to me. I could walk out the door with $130. But integrity as an adult is only as good as everyday situations. And so I said to the girl, I said, I'm sorry, but I can't take your $130. Well, it took them 15 minutes to figure out how to charge me, how to take my money back. So we get in the car and we go to McDonald's because we hadn't eaten yet. And we go to McDonald's and we drive into the drive-thru. We order 2 meals. It's $17, sir. Pull up to the first window. We get to the first window. The girl says, that'll be $7, sir. I looked at her and I said, are you kidding me? There's more people trying to throw me money. I said to him, we should go to the casino. No, never. So I says to the girl, I says, I'm sorry, the charge is $17. Well, it took him another 5-10 minutes to figure out how to take more money from me. Everybody's waiting behind. We finally get up to the window. The girl opens the window and she hands me an ice cream and a drink. I said, I didn't order an ice cream and a drink. I ordered 2 meals. Oh, I'm sorry. And they can't figure out where my meal is. Can you pull over, please, and give me? But my son is right next to me. And if you are going to be a parent, if you're going to be an adult with teenagers around, if you are going to be a youth leader, if you're going to step foot in this place while all those kids are watching, your integrity as an adult, your God-centered desire to do what is right no matter the circumstances is what's so important for kids to see. It's not about your words. It's about how you live out this faith that God has given you. I want to end with this one passage of Scripture. Because if you're a parent, you need a prayer that you can pray daily, if not hourly, if you've got a teenager. And it comes from Ephesians chapter 1. Would you put that up on the screen for me? This is Paul writing to the Ephesians, and I want you to put your kid's name in there. Even if they're out of the house and they're gone, you can still pray this prayer for them, all right? Here it is. I have not stopped thanking God for you. I pray for you constantly, asking God, the glorious Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, to give you wisdom and insight so that you might grow in your knowledge of God. And I pray that your hearts will be flooded with light so that you can understand the confident hope that he has given to those that he has called, his holy people, who are his rich and glorious inheritance. And I also pray that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us who believe. This is the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead and seated him in the place of honor at God's right hand in the heavenly realms. Now he is far above any ruler, authority, or power, or leader, or anything else, not only in this world, but in the world to come. That's a prayer that you can pray for your kids, for those kids that you're leading in whatever ministry that you're in, for your grandchildren, for your adult children. Pray it every day. Put a circle around it in your journal or in your Bible and go back to it again and again and again. You see, this thing that we call faith is important to pass on. And I want to close reading you another letter. I've been very blessed in my life to have parents and family that has passed on generationally the gift of faith. And this Christmas, my dad sent me a letter that was addressed to me and to all my cousins and to my dad's brothers and sisters from my grandfather, a man who died 3 months before I was even born. This was written in December of 1965. It's written by my opa in Holland. And my dad translated it into English, and I'd like to read it to you. We've come to the end of 1965. For all of us, every year is special. Not everything that we'd hoped for has been granted, probably. There are certain things that mark our lives. Perhaps we've been blessed with a job, enough to eat, reasonably good health, or recovery after sickness, a beautiful family, comfort in loneliness, a more rewarding job, the privilege of having close friends, the things we take for granted and which are in fact a profound blessing. We have experienced 3 surgeries in our family, but other events already in place are more rewarding. In the scriptures, it comes as the most important that we have been able to keep the faith. And remember, this is Christmas time. Therefore, the Christmas happening is certainly a good stimulant. There we meet the Almighty God reaching out to us in our misery, blindness, and helplessness, kneeling down beside us, and he says, from this moment on, not one person on earth will be able to say that I am unreachable. The everlasting God, in due time, takes on the likeness of a child to be close to us, and then he really means it. to find a way to our hearts, to connect, to heal, to restore. It requires our continued humility and thankfulness. This salvation decided from eternity, provided by the prophets, priests, and believers, has appeared in a manger, wrapped in swaddling clothes. Who can, after believing this, not be moved? Here the lost are kneeling and rejoicing beside each other. Races are of no importance because of this child, the world has been saved. Let us as a family live the time of Christmas in this way. In view of the faith-demeaning tendencies in large and small churches in the world, as I have clearly observed, and by which some of them reason, listen, it's not all that important that the story is real and the Bible is literal. How wrong that is. But the place, the circumstances, the dangers at the manger, the cave that he was born in, the barn, are all indispensable, indirect proof of this fact. These are the details of the unity of the Holy Scriptures. And my grandfather wrote this letter to me even before I was born. It's a great legacy of faith. Now, my grandfather was not a perfect man, and nor was my father, and nor am I. But there is one thing that I've learned from this letter and from my dad, and that I hope that I passed on to my kids, that when they look at me, when they read what I've written, when they hear the stories that I tell, that they see Jesus in every single thing. Amen. Let me pray for you. Father in heaven, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to raise kids. I got 4 beautiful kids, and I love them so dearly, and we're inviting more kids into our family as they get married. And Father, I pray a blessing upon them, and I know that every single person who has kids here today wants that for them. Lord, I pray that this blessing would be more than just thoughts and feelings and ideas, but that it would be deep faith that we show to them, that we give examples to every day, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I pray, God, that you would raise them up, these children of ours, to be men and women of great faith, that they pass on that faith to their children. And we ask this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.